everyone, my name is Prism, and welcome back to another video. So I, yesterday, went ahead and saw the brand new Steven Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day. Disclosure Day is Steven Spielberg's 35th official directed film, and it comes after a long line of the director really trying to make films that were special to him. Recently, Steven Spielberg's definitely been in a part of his life where he's been trying to make more pieces that are less commercial and more emotional. Especially Fabelman's his last film, which I didn't love, but you could definitely tell had his vision of wanting to tell his story and his love for film. It's one that I've wanted to rewatch and give a second chance, but suffice to say, Disclosure Day is his brand new movie. It's going back to his roots of science fiction and UFOs and aliens. Go back to Close Encounters, go back to E.T., there's probably one other film that I'm forgetting, but Steven Spielberg loves his aliens, and he definitely gets to play with them in this film. He definitely is making another alien UFO movie, and unfortunately that happens to be a really bad science fiction movie that advertises itself as something more thrilling and complex, but really just comes out to default sci-fi that is way too long and muddled by bad writing decisions and plot convenience. I said it. I didn't like Disclosure Day. I think Disclosure Day is probably Steven Spielberg's worst movie in his sci-fi era. Not his worst. I would say Artificial Intelligence probably fits that bill. But it's a really bad movie. I do not like Disclosure Day that much. To give a very brief overview, I gave it a 5 out of 10 in my writing that I did online, because I would say it's perfectly mid. It's, bad, but there's definitely aspects of it that I like, but it's bad. It's got a lot of problems, and I do want to get into a lot of those problems. So there's going to be two sections, spoiler-free and spoiler, and I am going to say this. Disclosure Day is directed by Steven Spielberg, and I will say in terms of direction, it is an amazing film. It is really well directed. He does a great job with direction, as he always does. That's never really an issue with his movies. It's more about the script. He's great at putting the camera somewhere and making the shot look beautiful. But Disclosure Day can't live on visuals alone, because its script is not there. Its script does not work at all, and really has a lot of major red flags in writing and in plot convenience, and just in general, there's no sense. It's a really bad, film. I'm going to talk about it. First, I'd like to get out the positives. And first, I will say the cast. While definitely an argument could be made that the characters don't exactly have chemistry, their actual roles and acting, they do a really great job of. Emily Blunt is really great in her role as Margaret Fairchild. She's really good at displaying the emotions, whether that's fear, or that's wonder, or that's, fear. Once again, there's moments in this film where you really get her sense of anxiety and fear, and at one point a panic attack, and you really believe her in this role. She does an amazing job with this role, and you can really feel like this is an actual person, feeling these emotions, and she's really the shining light in the film. And if this film's nominated for anything, I would say for Best Supporting Actress, or really Best Actress, because technically there is another female character that's introduced, but she barely gets any screen time, and that's another problem we'll talk about. You also have Josh O'Connor playing Daniel Keller, the other character that's really alluded to in the marketing. He's kind of the male lead, you could say. And also, it's a Steven Spielberg movie, so you have a John Williams soundtrack, which is great as always. I do think there are moments where the soundtrack doesn't work, but I don't blame John Williams. I blame whoever told him to make the score the way he did. There are just moments in the film where the score might be way too powerful, or it might be way too, trying to be intense, and it doesn't need to be. There's certainly moments in this film where it thinks it's being really, grand and really epic and really thought-provoking, and it isn't. It's just basic sci-fi. Really, that's the sad truth of Disclosure Day, because I do think there's a world where you could have made something compelling, and I do think there are really compelling ideas and moments in this film, but they just don't come together. And I would say the ending of the film is probably where the film falls off the rails completely and goes into almost stupid, laughable writing. And there's a certain moment where it starts, but it just keeps going over and over again. This gets really bad really quickly. It's just awful. Disclosure Day is probably one of Steven Spielberg's worst movies. I didn't say his worst, but one of his worst movies, because I really think that it just means nothing, and I feel really nothing. I feel for the characters, but I don't feel for the environment or really the situation they're in, and I just don't think that it's worth the 2-hour and 12-minute runtime that the film has, because there's just so much in here that's not needed or that just makes no sense. And like I said, the ending, when you get to that third act, it just starts falling all over itself into laughable and terrible territory. Alright, so to get started, I'm first going to make a point that I will be touching religion in this part of the review. And the reason is because the film does. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day supposedly is trying to answer the question of how would people of faith react if they realized aliens really did exist? How would they react, or how would their faith be shaken if they found out that really there's another life out there? That God didn't just create mankind and the animals, but he created aliens and UFOs, or something like that. And you would think, man, that could be an interesting question. That could be an offensive question. Like, how are you going to tackle that? How are you going to respect people's faith? Well, I'll tell you this. It probably does it in the least offensive way possible, and that is not saying anything profound apart from a few lines of dialogue. I'm not kidding. You could probably cut out the alien religious stuff and the film would be fine. Like, it doesn't matter, and it just is not needed, and it's clearly there for the marketing users and for the studio itself to be like, hey, go watch our movie. It's controversial. It talks about religion. Go watch our movie. Well, the funny thing is, I don't think this film is going to make a lot of money. I don't. Because it's a bad movie. It's a really bad movie, and at times, a really stupid movie. And yes, I am going to be blunt in this review. I wrote 3 paragraphs online about how this movie doesn't work, and I meant pretty much every word that I said. There's a lot that I don't like about this film. And for one, I think the film has too many characters, or rather, too many useless characters. At the beginning of the film, we're established with 4 main characters. You have Daniel Keller and his girlfriend. You have Margaret Fairchild and her boyfriend. You have all 4 of these characters. And 2 of them you could cut out of the film. You don't need Mumsley's girlfriend, and you don't need Margaret's boyfriend. Really, they're only there to help the characters with their situation, or to provide a hindrance to the character's situation, or to be a last-minute saving grace when the characters are in trouble. I'm not kidding. These characters barely get any screen time in comparison to Daniel and Margaret Fairchild, and they just don't matter. Now, of course, there are other characters that matter in the plot, like Coleman Domingo's character, and the supposed antagonist that wants to hide aliens being revealed for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That's the whole problem with this movie. There's so much going on, it doesn't make sense. But we'll just go with it. There's 4 characters, and we'll just start with Mumsley and his girlfriend. I don't even remember her name. But basically, these 2 characters, they're together, they're in a relationship, And, you know, we're introduced to them. Basically, Noah's saving her because she got involved in this whole, like, alien disclosure plot that the government doesn't want disclosed, but the people in the agency Munsley's in do want it disclosed. So basically, they go to her Catholic home, you know, her nun place, and basically, you know, there's some dialogue and stuff, and it's basically like, hey, you could stay here, and then she's like, no, I'm gonna come with you, and then from that, we basically go to Margaret Fairchild, and she's a weather reporter, and, you know, she's doing the weather, and then she's interacted with by an alien after seeing a magical sparrow. I guess it's an alien displayed as a bird, but sure, whatever. She basically gets the power to read minds, and so as she's driving to the news station late for work, she gets pulled over by the police and can just read minds. And apparently that ability is really useful for getting out of speeding tickets because you can just make them feel guilty or feel emotional. So, yeah, okay, whatever. Interesting. Intrigue. I like that. But yeah, then you have her news, you know, broadcast, and she just completely starts saying this alien gibberish that I think alludes to, like, what did you know that you don't know, or something along those lines. I don't remember at all. But basically, you know, meanwhile, Daniel's character is, you know, at this house. They're trying to evade being found by the government, and he goes to the field, and while he's out, the antagonist manages to use a special space rock in order to basically convince his girlfriend to murder him. And this is where we get our first real piece of religion stupidity and trying to be controversial, because the villain uses the line, what did Jesus say when he was going to be crucified? If you can take this cup from me, then do it. And then basically Munsley's girlfriend is like, but thy will be done. Wow, so religiously profound, so important, so worth upsetting religious people over, so worth putting in this film. I'm sorry if you thought that was so profound. It's not. It's not. That was a part where I'm like, I don't really feel 100% good about this. It's not needed. It's not needed. You don't need the line of dialogue. You have the scene. Just cut the line. Just change it. It doesn't matter. It's stupid. But whatever. It's our first piece of religion stupidity in this film. Religion isn't stupid. The way they're using religion to try and be controversial is stupid. But anyways, so yeah, now Noah's girlfriend is trying to murder him with a knife, and she doesn't. And yes, I'm briefly explaining the plot. I don't even know where to go with this review. Okay, so yeah, basically these two characters, they get separated, their partners go away. Margaret Fairchild's on her own, and Munsley's on his own, and they find each other, and basically they are on this mission to figure out why they've been kind of chosen for this purpose of disclosing aliens, and the film just gets stupider and stupider as it rushes to its conclusion. We get to a point, and this is where the film really falls apart, where, okay, I want to say this. There is a line that Munsley's girlfriend says that actually is kind of interesting, or rather her Reverend Mother says, where she basically says, like, I don't think you lost faith in religion, in God. I think you lost faith in people, which means absolutely nothing. But there is one question that's said in this whole conversation, like, did God create aliens if he made this whole vast universe, or something like that? And it's basically responded to by, like, well, he made a vast universe, so perhaps, like, yeah, perhaps there could be aliens to believe in. Not religiously, of course, but of course there could be aliens. Which I think is an interesting question, that God created the whole universe, he created the whole solar system, all these planets. but it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, it's almost like this is a subplot that got cut out at the last minute. It just doesn't make sense. But oh boy, the film gets way stupider as we go closer to the conclusion. So, we get to a scene where we go back to Margaret's childhood home, where she kind of has a vision, and this is after touching the magic space rock. I call it that because that's literally what the item is. It's a magic, like, just stone thing that can manipulate people's minds, so that's not a good thing, and I thought it was like a villain's item. But no, it's just used in order to, I guess, do whatever the heck you freaking want to do with it. Like, at one point, Margaret's character, Emily Blunt's rather, just decides, hey, all the lights went out on the TV news broadcast. I'm gonna just re-energize all the power generators or whatever, even though it's never been explained that the stone can do that. And sure, it's alien technology. That doesn't matter. It's bad writing. You don't introduce an item that has all these magical powers that you don't explain. It doesn't make sense. It's just stupid. I'm frustrated. Okay, sorry. So, yeah, basically Margaret Fairchild and Munsley are guaranteed to kind of go together and disclose aliens. Of course, only one of them getting all these magical powers, like mind reading and using the magic rock, while the other one just kind of sits there and has all the government information and math equations, so whatever. But yeah, so it just keeps getting stupider, because when we get to this house, when we get to Margaret's childhood home, and we see her, like, flashbacks, and we see everything, I openly was just kind of cringing at this whole scene. Because we go from just, you know, her being like, why am I seeing my childhood home and everything, to, oh, I'm seeing how me and Munsley as kids were destined and chosen by these aliens to disclose the truth. Oh, I should also mention that the aliens have been abused and mistreated by the government for years, which is an interesting plot point. Interesting decision. I'm gonna make one argument. I don't know what an alien is. Like, it's not an animal or a human, and you're expecting me to care about it, but whatever. So, yeah, that's kind of dumb. I would have said you should have had better writing, so I care about the character first, but hey, whatever. But no, the whole scene, oh my goodness, the whole scene where they're having this vision of all these things that happened and how they've been chosen by the aliens. And then at the end of the scene, they just look at one another and they go, whoa. Whoa. It's so dumb, and I audibly laughed at it. I'm like, this is so stupid. How did any screenwriter in Hollywood get a paycheck for writing that? I'm not even talking about the situation of them having that emotion, but just the words that they said, it showed it was awful. But we're not at the end. The end gets worse. So, right, after this, obviously, the US government, or whoever it is that has the desire to not reveal the aliens, basically decides to come after them. Well, the magic space rock can randomly turn you invisible, so Margaret Fairchild just holds it really hard, and everyone is invisible except for the rock, I guess? But the rock isn't invisible, I thought? Or what? Okay. Yeah, they're able to get past. Oh, and I didn't even mention the part where they're trying to get through security, and Margaret Fairchild's just literally making people remember people in their lives. Like, she turns into the bad guy's wife, and other characters that people have a connection to, as to almost say, hey, yeah, be distracted on the fact I'm someone you loved, which is an odd idea, but whatever, we're still going with it. I'm still speaking about this film. And then we get to the climax, where I don't even know what to say about the climax. So, we get to the news building where Margaret Fairchild started the film, where we saw her do her news report that was infamous for being the one where she was basically turned into an alien spokesperson. And she comes here. They're going to disclose the truth that aliens do exist, that they've been abused for years. They're going to show all this government footage. And what do the villains do? Well, they blow up all the power generators. That's a really smart idea. You don't want them to do a news report, blow up all the power generators. Except, there's Mumsley's girlfriend, who has another of the magic space rock, and at the last second, gives the MacGuffin to Margaret Fairchild, and she's able to turn on all of the electricity and do the news broadcast. And what does the antagonist do? He just sits there and kind of watches. And then, an alien is pulled out that's probably like over 60 years old. At least old enough to be in a wheelchair. He's been there since like the 1970s or whatever. And then the film ends with Margaret Fairchild just saying, "Listen." And that's it. We just cut to credits. That's it. Nothing else. Just end on the word listen. Listen to what? Listen to what? What the freaking heck am I meant to care about in this film? This is so dumb. Sorry for getting angry. Sorry for getting agitated and being a little bit, discombobulated. This is garbage. This is a garbage film. This is a really bad movie. And I totally get why people are worried about David Koepp writing the next Jurassic Park movie. Because he wrote this, and this is terrible. It was also written by Steven Spielberg, which has its own questions, but yeah, I didn't like Disclosure Day. It was terrible, it was a bad movie, and I really think, honestly, it could have used another 5 months of reshoots and whatever. Look, I'm going to say this. This is a perfect example of why you don't just give a director millions of dollars and give them free reign on an idea that has promise, but can be completely ruined by stupid decision making. I'm not up for studio interference usually, but I will say in this case, I think it might have been a good idea for Universal to have made him cut out at least some of the religious stuff, at least some of the worst moments. This film, in a nutshell, has terrible writing, has a MacGuffin plot, has cringy religious questions, has, in a way, offensive religious questions. I really didn't like the use of the "thy will" thing, because no, that's Jesus' line, you aren't Jesus, and that's another thing, too. Why are you making this character, Margaret Fairchild, be, the savior of the aliens? What on earth actually makes sense of that? This is terrible. Can we just cut the tape? This is terrible. Not great. Not good. I don't think Steven Spielberg's a bad director. I don't think he's a director that is terrible, but I do think that he maybe is at a point where he's making projects that really need a second pair of eyes on them. I'm not saying for him to have complete loss of creative control, but I think it could have used a little bit more writing, and it could have used a little bit of just fine-tuning in the editing room to try and make something impactful, because Disclosure Day was not impactful, except for making me laugh at it and be frustrated about it for hours. That's my thoughts. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and goodbye for now.